and welcome to the Wayfaring Panda. I'm Annette. Today I'm participating in 2 hops. So the first hop is Mix It Up Monday, where you take a traditional scrapbook sketch and mix it up using different types of mixed media. So today we're also participating in Christy's Beautiful Life 30 Days of Sketches, and we're using Sketch 9, and this one was created by Johanna Coulding. I didn't have any journaling cards that went with the paper that I'm going to use, so I'm making my own. I die cut a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock with a lawn fawn die, so it has stitching around the rectangle. And then I'm just using some stencils with my distressed oxide. And the great thing with this is you can use whatever stencils you want and ink to go with the paper that you're using. So I'm starting with a burlap stencil from Tim Holtz, and I'm using Frayed burlap distressed oxide ink. I'm just using some post-it tape to go over the sides because I want the sides of the journaling tag where the stitching is to remain white. Then I use Stormy Sky distressed oxide with my Newton's Nook musical stencil. And I'm using this because the background paper I'm going to be using has musical notes on it. And these are kind of the colors that are in that paper. I'm using this old journaling stencil I have from Creative Memories. It's quite old. I don't believe they make these anymore. But I'm using that with a micron pen to add some journaling lines. And of course I taped off the side of this one also. And I also liked how it had a flower because I'm going to be putting some other floral elements on the page, so I thought that would tie it together. However, when I got done with this, I decided that the lines didn't show up that much with all the background, so I took a larger micron pen, I think it was a 1.8, and went over it. But I couldn't use it in the stencil because I didn't think I could get it lined up all the way, so then I just tried to trace over, but I'm not very good at doing straight lines, so you can definitely tell it was hand-drawn. I wanted to include the journaling tag because I had no idea what the photo is of. I'm giving this album to a girl in Mexico, and I have pictures of her. And it looks like she's with a group of kids. I don't know if it's at a school or maybe they're getting their driver's license. I have no idea. So anyway, I'll include this so she can add her own journaling. And I'm giving her a set of micron pens to go with it. Now these micron pens, I've had mine since sometime in the 90s, so I know they last quite a while. The sketch shows weaving 3 vertical strips and 3 horizontal strips, so I'm cutting out some paper strips from Creative Memories paper that I found that I thought went well with the photo that I have. So I'm cutting these down to 2-inch wide by 11 because it doesn't show the weaving going all the way to the edge. I'm using products from different makers as well as different styles. So to tie them together, I'm going around the papers here with the same inks that I used on my journaling tag. These are some older papers from Creative Memories. I know we have some from when they originally put it out, probably around 2005. I don't really remember exactly, but they're old, so they're not on the regular Creative Memories website. However, I think I got a pack of these recently at a resale shop. So if you're trying to get scrapbooking supplies less expensively, a lot of times you can find these at resale shops or you can go to garage sales. Sometimes I find really good scrapbooking supplies there. If you're not really familiar with Creative Memories papers, originally they weren't 12 by 12. I think this is like 12 by 10 or something like that. Anyway, but they do now make 12 by 12, but their paper is not a thick cardstock like most scrapbooking paper. So this is even thinner than what like Echo Parker Simple Stories is. So I would compare it to, it's a little bit heavier than copy paper that you put in your printer, but not a whole lot thicker than that. But I thought that would be good with this layout because the page I'm going to use for the main part of it is heavy, so I thought using a thinner paper will be easier to weave and also won't make my page too bulky. I chose this piece of paper from the Elizabeth Craft Designs Grangy Wood collection, and I've never used her paper before, but I found it at a convention and I wanted to get it because I don't have much wood grain, and I always like the wood grain when other people use it. So I thought these colors went perfect with the papers that I'm using, and it's bringing out the brown and the kind of periwinkle color. What I like about this kind of paper is the mixed media is already done for you. So if you don't like making a mess, but you like the look of mixed media, there are a lot of companies that make papers that look like they're already mixed media, like this one, 49 in Market, and some Simple Stories has that also. And the other thing about this paper is it's very thick. I think it seems thicker than Simple Stories, but not quite as thick as the 49 in Market. So then I just laid down all the strips and tried to weave them and keep them straight. I think you could have just kind of glued these down as you went. I'm not sure how I would have done that either, but I wanted to keep them separate from the background because I'm going to do some sewing on top, and I didn't want to sew through all the layers. I used my Nouveau Deluxe glue to glue down where they intersect. And the great thing about using the glue is it gives you a little time to kind of maneuver them a little bit to make sure they're staying straight. Although I'm not sure that I really kept it straight throughout the whole process. But the great thing about using mixed media is it kind of looks intentional that way. It's not really like a perfect uniform look anyway. So even if you're like me and get everything a little crooked or wonky, it'll still be okay. Then I start laying out all my elements that I want to use, like the photo. And the photo has Post-it tape over it so I don't show anyone's identity since they're all children. And I'm also using some clusters that I got from Ginger's Corner with her monthly hop. And it's like their scrap to embellishment hop. I don't know who made the daisy cluster, but the other two that I was additioning up came from Mallory, and I'm not sure how you say her last name, Obra. Any case, she made the large one that I decided to put on top and the little oval one that I decided not to use. I also wanted to add these buttons, which has a different style to them that the colors match well with all the different elements that I'm using, as well as those clusters that I didn't even make. So go and shop your stash and just match up colors or styles, and it'll all look really good. So I decided I wanted to put the buttons in the areas where the papers overlap. Since my buttons are kind of a different style than the rest of the elements, I decided to pull out the same colors from the buttons and color them on that flower that's on the journaling tag. And I thought that made everything a lot more cohesive. I have all my markers swatched out in this booklet, so that helps me find which colors will go with the buttons. I found some green thread in my stash that goes with the buttons. Now, if you didn't have sewing thread to match, if you do embroidery, it's easier to match embroidery thread because usually if you have embroidery thread, you have lots of colors. So I'm just putting these buttons on the same way you normally would put a button on when you're sewing buttons on your clothes. I did find it worked best if I poked a hole from the top first so I could find where to go through. And also I had to start over because what I did is I doubled over the thread and then just tied a knot at the end. But the knot wasn't big enough to stay. It went right through my hole, so then I just made the knot bigger. I've never sewed buttons onto a layout before. I've glued them on but never stitched them. And also I've never done any weaving for a scrapbook layout. So that's why I like using sketches. It kind of challenges you to try new things. I know some people don't like using knots underneath their paper because that could make a little bump, but I didn't think it would add too much because this sewing thread is pretty thin. So I made it thick enough that it won't go through the paper, but I don't think it's really going to leave a bump, and under the button you're not going to be able to tell that anyway. I have seen people use washi tape or some other kind of tape and maybe glue on the back if you didn't want to make a knot, but I thought this would be more secure. I ended up going through the holes 3 times for each of the buttons, and I thought that made them secure and also allowed you to see the thread without making it too bulky. I used my Nouveau Deluxe glue to adhere my weaving onto the page, and I used the buttons to see which way to put it down. Then I used my mounting squares to attach my photo and the Nouveau Deluxe glue to add all the other elements. And I add those according to how the sketch shows, but I don't do it exactly because in the sketch it looks like there's 2 vertical photos, and I'm using a horizontal photo and a journaling card instead. Then instead of using the title, because I don't know what the picture's of, and it would also have to be in Spanish, I'm using that large cluster that Mallory created. So when you use a sketch, you can do it literally exactly how it shows, or you can put your own elements in and your own twist to match whatever items that you have and your photos. And that's what I love about doing these hops is everyone takes the same sketch and then you can see how different everyone's take is on it. And this is part of 2 hops, as I mentioned earlier. I think they both have a playlist. If they do, I'll put those at the end of this video and in the description. I don't think there's a hop list. I think it's a playlist. But if there is, I'll put that in the description below. I found these enamel dots that I had purchased at Joann's when it was on clearance, and this was before they went out of business. It was quite a long time ago. But I thought these colors went with my layout, so I add some of the hearts and stars to my layout. I'll put a list of the products that I'm using in the description below. Some of these will be affiliate links. They don't cost you anything extra to use, but I do get a small commission from any sales that the links generate, and that helps support my channel. Now, some of the products I can't put because they were given to me, so I don't know how they made the clusters, and some of these products are older, so they won't be out there anymore. But hopefully I inspire you to look at all your different products. All these came from different companies and places, but I tied them together with the color. So look and see what you have. Just because they're not in the same collection or from the same brand doesn't mean you can't mix and match. I know a lot of us hoard our stash because we don't want to use it up, but no one's going to see it unless you get it on a scrapbook page or make it into a card or something that people will see. So go ahead and use your stash and quit waiting for the perfect scrapbook layout or whatever project you want to use it for. Use what you have. Also save money and then also reduce the space that your stash is taking up. I decided that I needed to build up the cluster where the button is next to the journaling card according to the sketch, and also it just looked a little bare. So I looked at my stash and I found a butterfly and leaf in the 49 Market Vintage Artistry Nature Study Ephemera bits, and I decided to add those to the layout. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a like, and if you're not already a subscriber, I'd really appreciate if you can subscribe to my channel. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.